In this concept, we're going to look at how to harmonize with the left hand and make melody in the right hand using basic passing tone. And so we're going to start in the key of C. So here you'll see the notes appear, and then here you'll see where my fingers are playing. So let's just start with a simple C chord, C, E, and G. Now I'll do the same thing in the right hand, C, E, and G. So I'm going to mirror the same chord with right hand and left hand. Now my left hand, I can just keep a beat like this going. Now let's say the melody I want is C, D, E. Well, C and E belong to the chord, they go together, but the D doesn't. And it sounds kind of bad together. So the trick is the C goes with the chord, C, but then when I lift the chord, I go to D, and then when I push the chord back down again, I have my E. So it's like this. So notice the C and the E are happening at the same time as the chord, but the D is happening in between. C, D, E. And that makes it work. Now if I hit the D on the chord, it's a little rough. You will hear that a little bit in some children's songs, but then usually it's on beat 2, so it'd be like, and I don't know if I can set that up in this context very well, but so yeah, if I move along, you get that that's really beat 2, which is stronger of the weak beats. So 1 and 3 are the strongest. So what you wouldn't want to do is, I mean, you could, but that's pretty intense. And then also you don't want to, it just sounds wrong. So that's why D is called a passing tone. And the rules we're going to play by in this exercise is we're not going to accent it at all. It's purely a passing tone, only in between. Now let's look at the upper half of our chord. So we have C, D, E, and an E, F, G. So between E and G, we have an F right there. So we can use this same concept. E goes with the chord, G goes to the chord, but the F passes, and it sounds kind of bad by itself. So now let's do both of them. So I can use the passing tones between the root and third of my chord, or between the third and the fifth of my chord. I'm going to show you one more kind of motion we can do here. Let's do the 5, 6, 5. So 5 belongs to my chord, 6 doesn't. I like 6 chords, but it's the wrong kind of sound for what we're doing here. So I do the 5, 6 in between, and back down to 5. And you can do 1, 7, 1 as well. 1, 7, 1. And in fact, you can use this. You can go back and forth between root, second root. And you can go back and forth between third and second. 4 and 3. Oh, that was wrong. Go. And then 5 and 4. So there's a few different kinds of motion you can do there. So now if you take all those and just apply them to the next chord. So there's C chord. Now both hands move up to D minor. So here I hit a accented passing tone there, and it didn't really sound very good. That's better. So do that through all your chords. E, F, G, A, B. Now we're going to talk about how to invert chords. So think of I'm going to do it up here because you probably know the treble clef staff a little better. We have C, E, G. Well, why not E, G, C? Still a C chord, but it's inverted now. Why not G, C, E? So if you think about it, we have a 3-note chord, C, E, and G. Any one of the 3 notes can be in the bottom. So there's a 3 inversions. 3-note chord has a 3 inversions. Root inversion. First inversion. Second inversion. Now a 7th chord, let's look at G7. So that is, and I'll do it in an octave where it's easier to read. So I have G, B, D, F. It's a G dominant 7 chord. The one diatonic 7 chord is the 5 chord. It's a 4-note chord. So now what if I take my 7 and put it on the bottom? Now what if I take my 5 and put it on the bottom? Now what if I take my 3rd and I put it on the bottom? So I can just rotate through all the inversions of my chord. So a 4-note chord has 4 inversions. That said, I'm going to give you a left-hand accompaniment for the key of C. So again, I'll do it up here where it's easier to read. There's C. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave my pinky in place. My middle note is going to go up by a half step. I'm going to switch from my middle to my index finger there. And then my 5th, it's going to go up a whole step. So from your 1 chord, if you leave the root, and then you go take your 3rd up a half step and your 5th up a whole step. That's the recipe to get to an inverted 4 chord, F, A, C. So this is a first inversion F chord. So C chord, inverted F chord, back to C chord. Here's what it looks like down here in the left hand, which is where you're going to want to do this. Put it down in the bass clef for accompaniment. All right. Now let's talk about how to get from the 1 chord to the 5-7 chord. So that's G, B, D, F. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my thumb where it is. I'm going to let my middle finger go up to my index. In other words, the middle note comes up a 3rd, and in my root, I'm going to come down a half step. So here it is. Here's C chord. My 3rd comes up a half step, and my root comes down a half step. So basically, from the 1 chord, the root and the 3rd do the splits by a half step, and that gives me my 5-7 chord, and I'm leaving out this note, which is my the 5th of my chord. So I have root, dominant 7, and 3rd. It's a nice voicing. It's a 3-note voicing to a 4-note chord. I'm just leaving the 5th out. That's very commonly done. So C, G7, C. So C should be for my left hand. I'm using my left hand and I'm doing a treble clef just so you can see it. Here, I'll bring it down to bass clef. So left hand, I got pinky, middle, thumb. And then to go to the 5-7 chord, my middle finger is going to go to my index, my thumb's going to stay put, and my pinky's going to come down. So the recipe for 1 to 5-7 is that the root and the 3rd do the splits by a half step each. And then for my 4 chord, my root stays, my 3rd goes up a half step, and my 5th goes up a whole step. So 1 chord, inverted 4, back to 1, inverted 5-7, back to 1. And you can try going from 4 to 5-7. If I go from 4 to 5-7, this stays. That's my index finger. My thumb comes down, and my pinky comes down. So from my 4 chord, my 3rd stays, my 5th comes down a whole step, my pinky comes down, my root comes down a half step, it's 5-7. So now I should be able to get from any one of these 3 chords to any one of the other ones, and I have a nice accompaniment. So now the first concept we did with passing tones, I can add that to my repertoire. And what you're going to do on the right hand, if I'm doing a C chord, I'm going to mirror that here. Now for my 5/7 chord, what I want to do is on my right hand just do a regular root inversion of my chord. So I have the first 5 notes of, well, really it's scale degrees 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. And technically I could throw that in because it's in my chord, the dominant 7, though usually you don't double up the 7th. Little detail there. Alright, so now for my 4 chord, in the left hand it's inverted, but in the right hand I'm going to do regular inversion, same thing, passing tones. So that's the thing to exercise. Now let's bring it to the key of D. So D has 2 sharps, fat cats. So there it is. And this is my root inversion of D major. So then for my 4 chord, D, E, F, G, I need a G chord. And I'm going to invert it. So remember, to 1 chord to the 4 chord, what we did was we took our 3rd and we went up a half step. And we took our 5th and we went up a whole step. So there's an inverted G chord. So it's 1 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord. And then for my 5/7 chord, my thumb stays. And these do the splits by half step. See, there's my C sharp. So same song in the key of D looks like this. Let's go 4 to 5/7. Remember, from 4 to 5/7, you leave this one and pivot the other 2. Let's try it in E. E has 4 sharps. Fat cats go down. But you don't even have to think about that once you have your E major chord. From 1 chord to go to our inverted 4 chord. 3rd goes up a half step. And 5th goes up a whole step. So we have E, B, or no, A. See, there's A, C sharp, E. So E chord, A chord, E chord. Now for 5/7, we leave this, our thumb, and the root and our 3rd do the splits by half step. And there's a 5/7 chord. This is a B7. And we're leaving out the F sharp, which will be our 5th. So we got E chord, and then we got our A chord, and then we got our B7 chord, and back to E. So really you should be able to duplicate this in every key. And the trick is understanding, and here I'll go back to C, how to get from one to the next in terms of half steps and whole steps. You can do it by letter, but boy, is that a lot of thinking. A lot of stinking thinking. But when you're composing with this idea, which we're going to do soon, you're going to do a little composition project and finale with this, you're going to want to have your cheat sheet out for whatever key you're working in.